This tree is not, as we are told, a tree of danger tasted, nor to evil unknown, opening the way, but of divine effect to open eyes and make them gods who taste. And hath been tasted such, the serpent wise, or not restrained as we, or not obeying, hath eaten the fruit, and he is become not dead, as we are threatened, but thenceforth endued with human voice and human sense, reasoning to admiration, and with me persuasively hath so prevailed that I have also tasted, and have also found the effects to correspond. Opener mine eyes, dim erst, dilated spirits, ampler heart, and growing up to godhood, which for thee chiefly I sought, without thee can despise. For bliss, as thou hast part, to me is bliss, tedious, unshared with thee, and odious soon. Thou therefore also taste, that equal lot may join us, equal joy as equal love, lest thou not tasting, different degree disjoin us, and I then too late renounce deity for thee, when fate will not permit. Jingle. Here we go again, second episode of the podcast, and I wanted to start with this short extract from the 9th book of Paradise Lost, written by the insuperable John Milton. He proposes a complete new way to look at the biblical characters, and new and uncommon are also the ways he depicts the so-called biblical reality that most of us know pretty well, I suppose. The characters involved in the extract I chose are Adam, Eve, and the serpent, a transfiguration of Satan itself. I'd like to start with the Prince of the Light. And don't call me Satanist because I called him the Prince of the Light. Lucifer is etymologically linked to the element of the light because of his Latin name, lux, which means light indeed, and fero, which means to bring. Lucifer is a light bringer. If it is so, what kind of light? That's the question. Because, let's put it very clearly, we all associate light to something pure, candid, immaculate, divine, purifying, all features apparently light years far from the dark and often confused concept we have of the devil. To figure out the kind of light Lucifer brings, because here we are legitimately deducing that there are different types of light in both the real and over-real world that surround us. So, as I was saying, we have to dust off our mind to take the bright surface of the words back to their original meaning. We are not like Adam, who names things not knowing the reason of that naming process. On the contrary, we give a name to the things of the world because of a specific reason. The reason is that we like categorizing things, and we do not like when things doesn't belong to a specific category we created. I call it arrogant semantic colonialism, ACS. arrogant because, as far as I know, nobody ever asked permission to a goat to be called goat, precisely. I would have liked to know goat's opinion about it, but we have this despicable attitude mainly because of the lack of genuine interest in listening to the other's opinions, and then we mask this attitude, consciously saying that we did it naively. And this attitude is really diabolic, devilish, from all points of view, but even more from an etymological perspective. If we break the word diabolic into two parts, we find the prefix di, which in Greek means double, and the word bolik, which also comes from another Greek word, boulisis, that means wheel. This is even easier to understand just looking at the word devil, which broken into two parts results being de and will, so double will. If you want to believe in the fairy medieval stories where the devil was represented as an anthropomorphic horny god who mainly enjoyed raping Christians into forest, who, by the way, were really into hanging out into forest at those times, well, it's up to you. I'm not here to tell you what to believe in or not. As a matter of fact, the devil is diabolic because of his etymological nature. He has two wills, which might mean that he thinks something but he ends up doing something different from what he was thinking. Well, don't you recognize someone very famous for this kind of behavior? Yeah, it's you, it's me, it's us. From a certain perspective, a side of human nature is diabolic, and this is what Milton points out in his Paradise Lost. And just to give you a little extra historic context, Milton lived in the so-called Puritan age, and believe me, Puritans wanted to hear everything but any association between Satan and human beings. Milton is who he is because he had the guts to go against a certain religious system of beliefs where human beings were all sinners and God subdued them all. Why? Why going against a well-consolidated, utterly accepted way of thinking the world? Well, because when reality lets you down, I'm talking about a social and religious reality in Milton's case, well, you either die in it or escape from it. Right in Paradise Lost, not only Milton attacks the Puritan moral with unique subtle ferocity, but he also makes an attempt of escaping the way the world had been socially and religiously shaped. Milton's Satan is more human than any other Satans ever depicted in the history of literature. The serpent is a transfiguration of Satan, and Satan is a transfiguration of Milton himself, who lets the light bringer speaking on his behalf. I'm referring to the famous part in Paradise Lost where Satan claims, "It's better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven." You heard my satanic voice? It was really nice. No, I don't think so, but still worked. Milton wants to reevaluate his heavenly hell, created not by the fallen angel, but by the fall of the fallen angel. You see, there is a great difference between the two things. Satan doesn't create hell because he's willing to do it. On the contrary, he is obliged to do it since he is the rebellious one, and the actions of the rebels are corresponded by the reactions of the universe. That's physics too. I don't want to say he was destined to fall, but he kinda made that fall happen because he wanted to be kicked out of heaven. He wanted to escape. Milton's Eve is a literary device with whom Milton tries to rearrange the ordinary way to look at the character of Eve. I mean, the whore, the sinner. Well, think about it. Eve is just another transfiguration of Satan, so of Milton too, because she dares to rebel against her senseless father's law. So, who's more childish? Eve, who wants to fight against the illogicality of religion, or Adam, who submits himself to it? Eve has a Satan's transfiguration. He's the human light bringer because she offers Adam the apple from the tree of the knowledge. But what is exactly the nature of the light she gives Adam? You would say, knowledge, of course. Well, true, but knowledge is only the end of the ignition process of gaining knowledge. Eve gives Adam what you truly need to reach knowledge, and that's called curiosity, and consequently doubt. Curiosity and doubt. Adam eats the apple not because he's smart, he's just an obedient silly dork. He eats it just out of curiosity, and curiosity gave him the possibility to know, because knowledge comes out from questions and from doubting about our passive certainties. Adam gains knowledge, but knowledge of what? Well, after eating the apple, Adam looks at himself for the first time and he realizes for the first time to be naked. This epiphany symbolizes one thing. Adam, as a symbol of humanity, understands to be mortal. And this is shocking for him. He wakes up from his dreamy bubbly cloud and he figures out he's made of mortal flesh. That's the moment Adam starts thinking, using his brain and questioning about the goodness of his father. Milton's God, symbol of ignorance and bias, represents the authority who, at the same time, doesn't want his puppets to use their brain, their intellectual powers, because when and if this happens, that's also when God's dominion and God's property end. Adam used to have a one-dimensional will, the will of his father, while the diabolic Eve split Adam's will into two, giving him the critique power, because in some way she realized it was time to leave that intellectual Eden of ignorance, exactly like Satan, who wanted to escape from the reality of heaven, where he felt not to fit in. Let's also assume that Eve provoked Adam, so to let him gain the curiosity, the doubt and the knowledge, to leave together that embryonic condition they were chained to. Eve brought the light to the humankind, sacrificing herself and her reputation, because from that moment she would have been marked as the whore by all God's hooligans. And so, who's diabolic now? Luckily, we are still witnessing the biblical reincarnation of Eve in one of the most controversial and authentic artists ever. I'm talking about Marina Abramović, and I dare everyone who's listening now to look into her eyes and not feeling like pleasantly kidnapped into another dimension where pain and pleasure are the same thing. Marina used to have her Adam. His name was Ulay, and together they created some incredible pieces of performance art. I leave some links in the description. You have to look at those. They're mental. So, they were a strong couple. Their work was also their Eden, the thing that made them feel so holy. They had no God, but their love for each other, a love that was violent and tender at the same time. And it ended violently. Also Shakespeare once wrote, "These violent delights have violent ends." Their lyrical end was also epic though. They consciously and mutually decided to leave each other. But how? Well, think of all the ways you have broken up in your life and none of them would be like theirs. As I said, their breakup was also their last performance together. The concept was Eve leaving Adam and Adam leaving Eve, meeting each other in the middle rather than run away from each other. They went to China and they started a long walk on the Great Wall of China, Marina from the western part and Ulai from the eastern part of the wall. They walked towards each other for 3 months, and this was a staggering, simple performance and extraordinary in its clarity. After a 3-month performance, they met each other in the middle. They hugged, and their splitting up was also the end of their last performance, the end of their relationship. I don't know, but personally, poetically and religiously speaking, I find this much more divine than any god ever plausibly existed or invented. But you know, the figure of the artist itself is already very compromised. I mean, artists have always tried to represent the inner and the outer world according to their own way of perceiving it, so that the result of this representation was something completely different from the reality itself. I mean, the way the reality appears. Think about, I don't know, Impressionisms, Cubism, Dadaism, the unstoppable urge for all the artists to show how reality really is, but not just from their point of view, but from an absolute and objective perspective. Let's call it subjectively absolute. If we could make an addition of all the pieces of art ever produced in the history of human beingness, we would be able to see the real face of reality. And this is very controversial because we perceive reality thanks to our senses, which, by the way, can deceive us. But at the same time, artists and normal people, we all use our senses to reformulate the reality itself. Why? Why this uncontrollable necessity? Well, the answer is pretty easy. Reality may be kinda boring, disappointing, mediocre. Reality can be in hell. So, artists have very good reasons to reformulate it, and they do it not because they want to reveal the truth. On the contrary, they just want to understand, comprehend the thick, tough, paradoxical external skin of the reality, to swim a little deeper, and again, comprehension over truth. This is what Marina Abramović does, like all the artists, but not only she's the producer of the piece of art, which we generally appreciate as passive spectators, because this is what we learned from art. The artist produces the thing, and we admire it. Marina herself is part of the piece of art, and the so-called spectators participate in it, are in it, and this is revolutionary. Very similarly to the veil of Schopenhauer, which stands in front of our eyes and blurs reality, Marina literally erases and tears up the conceptual veil that keeps the artist separated from her creation and from her consumer. The point is that there is no more distance. There are no roles anymore. Artist, piece of art, and consumer are all the same. They belong to the same space, to the same reality, which, through Marina's performance, loses its original fragmentation. A performance that hits and disturbs our mind so much that we end up freaking out and reaching a momentum of intellectual and spiritual peace. It's like, suddenly and for no rational reason, all the pieces of the puzzle fit, and all our questions, which are likely to be the cause of the fragmentation of the reality, well, all our questions find a shelter. Not an answer, a shelter, because that's what we need when we walk disoriented in the terrifying world. When I say terrifying, I mean a world which seems incomprehensible because all the pieces of the puzzle are scattered, and what seems to be God ends up being Satan, and what seems to be Satan ends up being God. Marina Abramović, like the biblical Eve, rebels against the academic way of making art. How? Well, going against the gods of the Western society. I'm talking about the values, if we can still talk of values, and going against the system of beliefs of the disoriented and loony westernized world. She, exactly like the devil, puts order in the chaos and chaos in the order, giving us the light to see and to take possess of our forgotten self-consciousness and awareness. She says, stop obeying your thoughts, stop obeying your fake gods, stop obeying the idea of a predestined world, stop believing what you believe. You can blame her because you could claim you were better in your paramecium way of being. I wouldn't blame you. You know, when you believe that the shadows you're looking at represent the reality, it's really, really hard to find the bravery to go out the cave where you have been living for ages and not being blinded by the sunlight. It's true, light can hurt after a long period in the darkness, but I say, let the light burn everything, and let's build a new consciousness from the ashes of what we have produced as passive spectators of this society. Or, if you are so scared of light, you may just find a decent way to get orientation in the darkness among the shadows. But that's not easy, because as Karl Kraus once wrote, when the sun of the culture is low, even dwarves will cast long shadows. It's a matter of choices, and it's up to you to decide which god or devil to follow. So, it was everything for today. I hope you enjoyed the second episode of the Sandwich Philosophy. Let me know your opinions, leave me a comment, and feel free to subscribe to the channel and follow me on Spreaker and Spotify. Patreon is still a work in progress, but should be ready in a bit. And thank you so much for listening. I truly appreciate it. Have a good day, and remember, enjoy your sandwich, but one thought at a time.